Welcome to Soul Wellness with Kristen, where we get into the nitty-gritty of various holistic modalities and explore exactly how they help you heal. I'm your host, Kristen, and I invite you to join me on this enlightening expedition where we explore the connection between mind, body, and spirit. In each episode, we'll talk in depth with holistic providers, medical professionals, therapists, and healers. Our goal is to empower you with knowledge, inspire you with stories of resilience, and provide practical tools that you can integrate into your daily life. So, find a comfortable space and join us as we explore the multifaceted world of holistic wellness. Get ready to learn how to improve every aspect of your life and simply feel good. The adventure begins now. Thank you for joining us. Today I have Michael Anthony with me, who is a certified master life coach and certified hypnotherapist, but a lot of people also know him as a spiritual health coach and a psychic healer. So welcome, Michael.
What's up, Kristen? How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm happy to have you on. I've been talking about having you on this podcast for a while. So
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's good. So what exactly do you do?
That was always a running joke. I started off as a certified clinical hypnotherapist, and that shifted into my gifts opening up. And now I just basically walk people through their shadows. I walk people into their deepest, darkest places and help carry them through until they're ready to start walking on their own.
That's really interesting. I know just working here at Soul Wellness and watching you see clients, a lot of times people leave in tears.
Yeah.
So you're kind of known for making people cry.
Yeah, I have a reputation for making people cry.
That's not a bad thing. They're healing.
No, it's good. Yeah, and because tears are just a biological response to overwhelm. Mm-hmm. We cry when we laugh. We cry when we're angry. We cry when we're sad. So it's just the body's circuitry saying, okay, we need to either let some pressure off or blow a fuse. So let's let the pressure off.
Right.
I celebrate when tears happen. I'm happy when tears happen for me.
I see it as working through a layer of some sort.
Yeah. It's, well, we've also been taught not to cry. And crying is a form of weakness or vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And if you walk around the world, not a whole lot of people being vulnerable.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I think you miss out a lot when you are not allowing yourself to be vulnerable.
Yeah, so I love it when people cry.
Well, a lot of people, I will say, make the comment to me how profound the sessions are with you, that they have these major breakthroughs. I know you see a lot of different things, and I know you've seen some pretty extreme things. So yeah. Tell me about that.
Okay, so usually when someone comes in, well, I'll back up first. When I grew up the youngest of four in the family. I was the baby, and there was a lot of pain in the family. There was alcoholism, suicide attempts. There was just a lot of pain. Mm-hmm. And I came in as a little baby, and 5 or 6 years old, Mom said, I'm here to save the family. And I felt physically safe, but I didn't feel emotionally safe. So when I work with someone now, my main intention is to create the safest space for them. I'll handle it physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And most people who come in are those natural people pleasers. You know, the natural born givers and the people pleasers. Right. That's what I meant to say. And it's just interesting for them to come in and have someone else who holds it all together. They don't have to do anything. Mm-hmm. Their nervous system just drops down, and then suddenly, oh, I'm not holding on so tight. And then things start coming to the surface. And a lot of times we walk through life really tight, trying to control the things that really want to, or asking for help and really want to come up to the surface. So in that space, the main intention more than anything else is being 100% present and then just creating the safest space possible.
But you intuitively just know what to do with people because you don't have a set plan. Do you do any kind of assessment or consultation first before somebody sees you?
We sit down and we talk. And in that space, a lot of intuitive psychic stuff shows up, and I know what questions to ask. And I'm also the mirror back to what they say. In person, when we're sitting down, the spoken part of them speaks the spoken part of me, and we find some space that is being unspoken, that is asking for help. When we go to the table, the unspoken part of them speaks the unspoken part of me, and then we just know where to go.
So when you have someone on the table, this is more relaxation. There's no body work involved.
Not body
energy work.
But there's energy work. I'll usually go down to the ankles. I'm finding there's something that happened in the last few months that if I go to someone's ankle, something just happens. It's like a portal of some sorts, and I don't even know what it is yet. I just intuitively know to go to the ankle, and people relax.
Something about it's grounding. Probably.
It's very grounding. Well, I shifted from this. I'll go to the feet too, but then I slide around and I come to the ankle and hold, and just something very interesting happens for people. The other thing that happens quite a bit is I'll hold a spot, and then I'll bring another spot in and say, which feels better? I'll go A or B, A and B, A, B, and the person will just have an answer. And it starts moving down the layers deeper, 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 deeper down into that place that is locked, that is really just asking for help. Mm-hmm. So it's in that space.
And then are you asking questions as you work with someone to kind of help uncover?
Yeah. Yes, we do talk, because I want people to feel free that they can just have the expression they need to have, because how many times in life we've been told not to speak,
right,
or this place wasn't safe enough to speak. But communication's happening from the physical sense, the spiritual sense, and the actual communication between two people.
How long is a normal session with you?
I would say 90 minutes is where we start, but I usually keep 2 hours open.
Okay.
And sometimes if we're in something, like I don't like to just look at the clock. If I have time, let's just see what we can go a little further.
See where it goes.
I've had sessions in the past that went 7 hours long.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't even know. This is the beginning when I was doing this in Arizona, and I was leaving town. I didn't know if I was coming back, and sessions you hit a bubble, and you thought you were 90 minutes. I remember one time I looked at the clock and I was like, we went a little over your session. Oh, how long? We went over by 5 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Because when you go into that space, time is removed a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
And it just becomes this space that you're saturated in. And if you're feeling safe, and suddenly parts of you that have been unspoken for so long are finally raising their hand, like it's safe to come out now. And that's why healing work is really interesting, because you can work on something and clear that. And you're like, oh, good. But now you're a little bit safer. Something underneath is like, oh, that's removed. I can come up now. That's why it's constantly peeling the layers of the onion back.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating.
It is. And I needed this years ago, and this is why I'm doing this work. And then even further than that, I look at it, I'm showing up for people the way the younger version of me needed someone to show up that didn't show up.
Right.
To make the space emotionally safe. And then someone I could talk to. And someone I could just know they're 100% present with me.
How long have you been doing this? Because you were in corporate America.
I was in corporate America. I think about 8 years now on some level. It's been a journey. I studied with a Native American elder. I hopped around from Arizona to out to here. I was an explorer.
Yeah, but it was all on purpose.
Completely on purpose. I could look at every little thing that I bumped my head into. And I always say, if you bump into something, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going into puppy dogs and rainbows.
Right.
If you have a breakthrough.
Right.
You might bump into something else, but it's on the other side of that. You'll have more access to puppy dogs and rainbows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It's all fascinating, yeah.
It really is. I mean, like I said before, it's fascinating to watch people come out of a room with you, because you know that their life just shifted.
Thank you for saying that. And it's beautiful, because I'm seeing myself in them too. Mm-hmm. So as I'm working with them and being 100% present for them, there's magic happening across the board. When their world becomes better, my world becomes better. Mm-hmm. And I may intuitively have something come through me. I'm like, oh, wow, that's for me and a few other people too.
Isn't that cool?
It's amazing. So I'm learning from the people coming in too. It's interesting. We sit down, we talk, you get people safe, but you also reflect back, and then something just might happen in that moment. Mm-hmm. Then we're taking where that's showing up in the body to the table. Then I'm interweaving some hypnotherapy, some energy work, and whatever zhuzh comes through me that I don't even know what a name for it. I've literally made up names. It's like, what's psychic healing do? That's a BS term. It's just, people have an understanding of what it is, but it's just, I show up and something happens, and it's a safe space.
I would love to be a fly on the wall in an elevator if somebody asked you what you did. Okay, you got 10 seconds. What do you do?
Well, it's funny. I assess really quickly, who is the person here? Am I telling them I'm a hypnotherapist? Because I'm not here to scare people. But if I also see they lean in, I'm like, I do psychic healing too.
Right.
Like, oh, what is that? And it's just, because I'm looking to create the safe space to stretch people outside of the office and in the office too. Because all we need to be stretched, because it's the parts of ourselves that are so locked up, or the parts of ourselves that are in pain,
right? That
are scared. If we can create a space that they can just breathe, which leads, a lot of that work leads into inner child work. And talking to the 5-year-old. What does the 5-year-old need? Okay, your parents didn't show up. I get it. I had great parents. They didn't show up the way I needed at times.
Right.
They didn't know how. So if I can talk to the 5-year-old along with you, if it's the 5-year-old who's asking in that moment, what do you need? And then we can give it through the person to their 5-year-old. It's amazing what shifts.
Yeah.
It's amazing what gets a bow is put up and tied. I'm like, we don't need to do that anymore.
I feel like a lot of different providers will take you back to working with your younger self, different ages, and it's really profound work to do that.
It's so important. And what I'm finding out too, the languaging I try to use these days is just as simple layman's terms as possible. You basically have Christmas tree lights, and one of the old bulbs go out, and then the lights start flickering or they shut down. You go to that one bulb that has the issue, and you just help the energy pass through that bulb, whether replacing it or just twisting in tighter. And then when that gets taken care of, the circuitry just comes through. You might have something that was so traumatic to you and anger is stuck in there.
Right.
You just help anger move through the system. You may not even have to have the big epiphany of life or something. You just might need to help move, and that's sounding. Maybe you need to make some sounds in that moment. Maybe it's a giant sigh. Maybe you need to move your body in that moment. You're just looking to help to complete the circuitry so nothing is stuck in there. And that's what happens in past lives too. Something gets stuck. All you're doing going into a past life, you're taking the person who's stuck, that version of you from some other time and space who's stuck, and you're just letting them move to the next level. It's just movement on a different level. And many times it's an unseen level.
I was going to say, I bet that there's a lot of things that come up that people had no idea.
Oh, completely.
And they're just like, I didn't even know that that was still a stuck point or a memory or something that was bothering me.
All the time, somebody will say something that they've probably said a million times. It just stumbles out of their mouth. It's part of their story. And you pause them and say, wait, what did you say there? And you can see where the pause happened. It's like, okay, what did you say before the pause? What did you say after the pause? And now they're suddenly like, oh, it's just what I just said. It's like, no, say it again. Slow it down. And next thing you know, that line goes right to something, and they suddenly will have a memory of something that comes up, and they had no clue.
Just buried.
But asking for the longest time to be acknowledged, to be seen, to be heard, or to be under some pile of dirt, knocking on the dirt saying, please just dig a little deeper for me.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, everybody just wants to feel heard, feel accepted, and feel supported.
Well, that's the other thing, invalidation. So if somebody comes in and like, I don't feel good, I'm not looking to shift them out of feel good right away. Let's validate that. Because how many times as a kid did you say like, oh, I'm sad about something? Like, oh, you got nothing to be sad, I move on. And I understand there's, in a lot of my family, a lot of people are like, oh, this is no big deal. It's like, maybe, but to the 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old
it was everything.
kid, it was everything to them. And if it just got stuck in a loop somewhere in your body, in an organ, in a muscle, in some fascia, and you go to that child on some ethereal level that's in the body on a physical level, you would be surprised what actually shifts and comes out of it.
Incredible.
Yeah. I wrote a story the other day about my time. When I left the corporate world, I drove for Lyft. And as I reflect through everything, even in my work, it's 100% presence. And I started reflecting in previous stories of where was I 100% present. And I just wrote a story the other day about a time where I picked up a Mexican-American in Arizona. And the joke is, he fit the stereotype of a Mexican gang member in a movie directed by a white suburban director. He was perfect stereotype.
Wow.
And when I was talking to him, he was very nice, and he just got 10 years in prison. And he was very animated about some words that were just spoken, and he had a trigger on something. I just started talking to him, and he started unwinding, and then he started sobbing in a car, and he told me the most traumatic thing that ever could have possibly happened to him, where he was violated in such a hard way in prison. This man just, in the moment, just started sobbing in the car. And I pulled over, and I just sat with him. And at the end, I said, is there anything else you need? He said, no, thank you.
Wow.
Because in his community, that's unacceptable. I may be the only person he tells. I'm sure I was the first person he told. And for him to go through the whole emotions of like a little child with the quivering lips, and then suddenly to just fall apart. And then when everything moved through the system, to pop back up like, I'm okay. Sometimes it's just presence. Now, we all bring our gifts into this presence place.
But you obviously made this guy feel super safe.
Completely.
Grounded, safe, and...
I recognize that.
And he could express.
Yeah, thank you. And I recognize that, because that's what I realize is that's so important. We don't get that. It's go, go, go. It's here to respond. Someone says something, oh, let me tell you about mom's greatest apple pie. Oh, my grandma made better apple pie. I can't wait to say it. You're not even listening anymore.
Exactly.
And then you have people who are the natural born givers who show up for people, and no one's showing up for them. Or at least not showing up for them in the way they may need.
Right.
And they're not expressing it.
Right.
So if we can just bring presence into the situation, it almost doesn't matter what happens next. Yeah, all our natural gifts will come to the surface. And the reason I'm saying all this is because part of this work is to empower people that they don't need us forever. I'm here to help people get to that level so they can go out in the world, just do what they need to do.
Right.
And then if they choose to be this role for somebody else, whether the role is in an office here at Soul Wellness or it's in an office in a corporate world somewhere. That's the whole process. It's like, how can we lift each other up? But we have so many people who are so buried under so much, and they think being buried is, oh, I'm good. Well, let's take a look at that. Maybe you were good there. Maybe being buried was what you needed to protect yourself.
Right.
But you're not there anymore. You're somewhere else. You're somewhere else differently inside of you. So let's start clearing some of that dirt off and see what shows up. Mm-hmm. And then when you look back, being buried for those 10, 15, 20 years may have been the best thing for you or not. But you start to see different levels of wisdom as you start going through the work and uncovering parts of yourself that were so scared to speak or didn't know how to speak. When I had the realization that I had a very severe back injury, I didn't really know if I'd walk again at one point. It shaped everything in my life. But I had, over the years, a few little whispers of things that made sense to me. And about a month or 6 weeks ago, they all just came together. So I already knew all these pieces, but they came together in like the most potent sandwich ever. Mm-hmm. And it was in that moment I realized I grew up with so much pressure. When your mom tells you at 5 or 6 you're there to save the family, and there's people trying to kill themselves in the family, and there's just, the place is falling apart, but everyone's hiding behind a smile.
Wow.
I had a beautiful family.
Yeah.
They had reasons for where they were, but I felt like a failure. And as I started moving forward in life, I just felt pressure after pressure. I had to be perfect all the time, unless my back went out. When my back went out, everyone backed up. Then I realized, oh, damn, my back has been my greatest protector. It has been helping me more than I ever could possibly imagine. So this thing that many times in my life I cursed at, I'm like, no, I need to love that thing because that was my greatest protector when I didn't know how to protect myself. My back going out showed up and took all the pressure off.
Yep.
And then I started thinking, though, I could have done this thing, but my back didn't go out. Then I was recognizing I was giving too much power. Instead of working with that piece of myself, which I didn't know then, but now I know, I realized I can work together with that. Mm-hmm. Hey, we can still protect ourselves, but we don't need to throw our back out so we can't get off the ground.
It's incredible.
So that's the thing. It's powerful when we realize the things we're cursing at might actually be trying to help us.
Right.
But it might be working in a way that might have worked once before but doesn't work anymore. But we're just stuck on this one pattern, this one repeating cycle that happens all the time.
You haven't had back issues in a long time, have you?
They peak up from time to time, but I recognize when they show up is when something's happening that's asking a lot of me. The last time it really went out, something really big happened, but I had to rely on other people, but they were relying on me. There's miscommunication and everything fell on me. And I realized, oh, it literally happened like 10 minutes after the big thing happened. I'm like, oh, of course, okay. So then I had to turn to my body and say, what do you need? What do you need? And over a few days, it just started breathing again. It's like, okay, we can do this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was so upset with my back for so long, and I realized it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Isn't that interesting?
It is. It is to me. Maybe not to anybody else. Not to my family. Like, shut up. When I first started out doing this work, and if I was hypnotizing somebody, and they got up, I'm like, okay, great, thanks, see you later, and they left, and I was like, oh, especially when I was a student in the clinic, I'm like, oh, was it good? Did I do a good job? Like, I didn't know. And then you'd get a letter or you get an email later on from someone like, oh my God, that was the most amazing thing. Because it took them a moment to catch up with what was processing underneath.
Right.
Because you're throwing everything, all the cards in the air, and you might leave before they all hit the ground. And you might need to turn one or two of them over and be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
This is so funny. The thing that's showing up so much for me these days is everybody stop working so hard on this deep, deep digging. Because what's happening is you're opening a door and you're scrambling. Allow the pauses to come in too. Because the truth is going to be in the pauses too. So think about when you have an epiphany. You're usually not doing a whole lot, usually kind of lost into something and something just pops in.
Right.
So in all of this stuff, it's like, I worked hard for so long at doing so many things. And there's still a level of working hard, but it's not running around just with, like a chicken with your head cut off. It's allowing the phone to ring, the inspirational, intuitive guidance in the phone call inside. And then I pick up the phone and then take inspired action.
Right.
Versus just running around constantly trying to make things happen. Now there's human design. We'll say one person should do this, one person should do that. But I'm sure there's some level that everyone's working a little bit too hard.
Agreed. You have to slow down.
You have to slow down.
Yeah.
So I'm Cap rising in Virgo, and it's like go, build, go. And I realize I just need to also allow myself to recharge.
Absolutely.
And trust that what I did is going to help me get to the next level. Because then it's trusting in something bigger than me. Because I've had a lot of experiences in life where miracles happen all the time.
So, talking about slowing down, do you meditate a lot?
I find things to do where I can get out of my head. And I just started re-meditating because I've meditated for a long time and I've kind of coming back through because I looked at what was working for me and realized, okay, something has shifted again. Now it's baseline. Because for me, meditating is sitting in the baseline is what is my new baseline. So it allows me to stop moving. But you might be meditating washing dishes. Mm-hmm. I used to meditate while I ironed my shirts.
Right.
For me, getting in the car and shutting the radio off and going for a ride, that's pure presence. I have my own bubble, so my energy can open up.
Yeah.
And I just get lost in that moment. I've crossed the country 4 times in my car.
Yeah.
And that's some of the greatest times I ever had.
I've always wanted to do that.
It's a pretty amazing experience.
Yeah.
It was for me. I know some people it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
But there's something about, especially if you're energetically sensitive, to have that space where your energy can just open up, it's pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, you can breathe a little bit differently. You can tune in. People are so scared sometimes with regression work that they're going to find somebody did something wrong, blah, blah, blah. Trauma doesn't always come in those ways.
Right.
Trauma could be the most simplest whisper of something.
Right.
The example I use quite a bit is my teacher said when she was younger, her mom put her in the front yard in the grass and then went inside to get on the phone, but sat at the bay window and watched her 10 feet away. But this little child, 2 or 3 years old, looked left, looked right. My mom's not here. I'm abandoned. Mm-hmm. So where her brain was developed to, she could only create so much of a story. And that's the story that was created. Now, when you see the whole picture, mom didn't abandon her. But the child has a story that became prevalent through this person's life. Mm-hmm. And this person was telling me in their 60s when they shared this story with me. And this ran with them for decades after decades.
Oh, man.
So it's not always these big, horrific things that happen. A lot of times the trauma happens in the simplest, smallest things where no one think anything was wrong. Mm-hmm. Now imagine saying to your mom, you left me. I was right here. And if this was in the 50s or something, it's like, oh, stop. Mm-hmm. We just got done with World War II. We don't have time for this nonsense.
Right.
Right. So, and I think about my parents. My dad was born during World War II. It wasn't time to be real soft and cuddly.
Right.
So it's kind of being in that space where can you parent yourself the way you need to be parented now? And that's going into those spaces of seeing what you need because now you know your life better than anybody else. So if you can go to that space and just bring some solace, some peace, some validation even, yeah, you'd be surprised what can happen.
It just amazes me to think about what people are carrying. The luggage that they're carrying,
So much.
the trauma that they're carrying, and the triggers that they have from it. It's just really, when you really start to look at people and look at behaviors, especially negative behaviors and things like that, you're just like, what the heck is wrong with that person? And then you really think about it, you're like, they've got some triggers there. That's coming from trauma. That's
right.
And to carry that for decades and not find Michael Anthony and work through it,
Seriously.
and uncover it so that you're a lighter, better person.
It's amazing. I talked to my dad quite a bit in a deep space before he died. And the things he shared with me that he didn't share with anybody else, I could see the lightness in him. Mm-hmm. And he was still struggling. He broke his hip and he broke his femur, and this really super strong former Marine just started to waste away on some level.
Yeah.
But he let me in. And he shared things that he didn't share with anybody else.
Was this the first time that you were hearing this?
Oh, yeah. So what happened is we would take these long trips to go see my daughter for her birthday. And he was a storyteller, and he would tell me stories, and I'd heard a lot of the same stories. And at first, I remember I internally rolled my eyes, like, oh, I've heard this story many times. I'm like, wait a second, what am I doing? I'm in Arizona, my dad's in New Jersey. I have 20 hours with him in the car over the weekend. Let me take the same story he's telling me. Let me ask him different questions. Mm-hmm. And he just started unpeeling and unrolling the layers back. And I'm like, I never knew any of this stuff. And I got to know my dad so deeply. And then he started trusting me on a level of, in his vulnerability, he started to show me that to me because of the work I do and the questions I was asking. And I was asking him vulnerable questions too. And after a while, he's like, oh, okay, let's do this. It was pretty amazing.
That is amazing that he was willing to be open.
He struggled so much with the loss of my mom, who had died roughly 8 years earlier. And he would sleep every night with a ring on his chest. It's like, they were married 54 years. And then we just started talking about it. And it was to the space of, I said, why don't you write mom a letter? And he wrote a letter, and I came home, he shared it with me. And he was able to put something down. He gained part of his power back. It didn't change anything with how much he loved my mom. He just took some power back from the story that he was perpetually telling himself, that he had to do this thing always, otherwise it wasn't going to be loving of my mom anymore. So there's a sweetness and an exhale he was able to take at some point. And it was really powerful. Mm-hmm. And I look at those times and I'm just so incredibly grateful. It's stories too. I mean, it literally is stories that get stuck in. When my brother called me to tell me my dad died, I missed the call and I saw it a minute later and I said, I know what this call is. I'm going to take 10 more minutes to live in a world my dad's still alive.
Right.
And that was the best thing I did for myself.
Yeah.
But I knew my dad was dead at that point. I just knew it. I just didn't hear it yet.
Yep. It wasn't your reality yet.
It wasn't my reality yet. So I needed to tell myself that story and just sit and literally say thank you. Mm-hmm. And the other beautiful thing in that space is before my dad died, I wrote him a letter of everything, like everything, every lesson he taught me. And I shared with him everything. And it was the most beautiful thing because it was just sharing these stories of what he taught. And it's just energy changing back and forth. And why shouldn't he be able to receive this while he's present? And it just, again, it was, we had opened this thing together and it became so deep and close. And for years, my dad said, I don't know what you do. I have no idea what you do. I don't understand it, but I still support you. That's what he always say.
Right.
It was so beautiful. And I think towards the end, he's like, okay, I think I understand what he's doing.
I get it.
Yeah.
I see what you do. Yeah, because he got to experience it a little bit.
So it's not the same, but when we sit down in front of somebody and doing some work, what are your triggers? What are your stories? Where are things stuck? Even if you don't know what they are, just start talking. People are like, what are we going to do? I said, just start talking. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm just yammering. I said, if I need to correct you, I'll pull you back. Keep going. Because it's in this expulsion of words and energy, there's little charges that are being fired. And it's up to me to say, oh, got that one? Let me write that note down. Got that one? Let me write this down. And then reflect those back to them. And then people are like, oh.
And then watch their mouths drop.
Completely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. I freaking love this.
It's awesome. You are doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
Thank you.
You're so talented at what you do.
I appreciate that.
And I know that from talking to people all the time that work with you.
Thank you.
They're just like, that Michael Anthony is amazing.
The other thing, too, is I try to make it fun because it is deep work.
Yeah.
And if you're going to go deep, 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 you're going to get exhausted. You need to take a breath. Mm-hmm. And I'm from New Jersey. I make smart-ass comments all the time.
Yeah.
Like I'll say stuff and people will laugh. And then it's like, okay, we have a new experience, new energy. Then we go again. It's like a dance.
Yeah.
If you just keep chiseling away and never come up for air, that's going to be exhausted. Who wants to do that all the time?
How often do you work with someone? Do you find that they come back to you?
I do. And I've noticed something recently. So I just put out a 10-week mentorship program.
Oh, wow.
So, because what I recognized is it's great when someone comes in, we do some deep work, and then they'll go run and see how it fits for a while and then come back. But I've also recognized when someone makes a commitment of so many sessions, and then in that time, we shrink the container. So they're doing the work, and then they're walking out in the world, but they're only going 10, 15 feet, and then we're course correcting right off the bat. So there's something interesting about that space of doing deep work in a smaller container. When you stumble, with quotes, you're not stumbling too far. You're already being caught and it's quickly moving you back in the direction. And it's a really beautiful container that it's like a bubble you're walking around the world because you know instantly, okay, something's happening here.
Yeah.
But people come in. I mean, they can come in every 6 weeks. Sometimes people come in. Some people come in every 2 weeks or even virtually.
Okay.
That's why when people say, what do you do? I say, I'm co-creating with the person. It might look so different because what the person's coming in front of me. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's like a trauma release.
Yeah.
It's like a trigger resolve, you know?
It's, imagine someone showing up in the most present state that they can possibly imagine. That's really my intention. Showing up with strength, with love, and then walking you through the places that you received none of that. Mm-hmm. Stuff happens.
For sure.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful.
It's very powerful.
Yeah. And again, I needed it. So I'm just doing what I needed.
So who did you find when you were starting out? You worked with a lot of different people, I know, in Arizona.
I did. So I randomly stumbled in front of somebody in New Jersey, and I had a session with them the night before I was visiting Arizona. They did Reiki, and I got off the table, and my life was different. I mean, literally.
In one session?
Yes, something completely shifted.
Whoa.
I remember I got there, and she's like, oh, your grandmother's here. Oh, and your mom moved the powder blue chair from the front of the house to the back of the house. I'm like, that just happened. I was like, hey, Nan. Like, okay. And I felt like my grandma came in and said, trust this lady. She just, I say just, but she did Reiki. And I literally got off the table, and it felt like somebody cracked the facade, and now my light was coming out because the sky was bluer, the grass was greener. But the next day, I was going to Arizona for less than a day. I'm going to Vegas. Mm-hmm. My friend lived in Arizona. Let me go to Arizona. Let me see where you live. We'll go to Vegas from there. I got on the plane, and I started seeing orbs over people's heads. When we landed in Sky Harbor at 11 o'clock at night, the second the wheels hit the ground, I'm like, oh, I have to move here. This is my new home. I went to Vegas, went back to New Jersey, packed up, synchronistically, literally everything came together and picked me up and brought me to Arizona. I was like, oh, I guess I have this new life. And even in that space, people would stop me and like, man, you're really relaxed. You have a deep voice. You should do hypnotherapy. I'm like, I did do hypnotherapy. How do you know that I want to help people? They're like, oh, you should do that. I'm like, okay. When I went to Arizona, someone said to me, I said, I do. I won't even know where to begin. And they just pointed to a building. That building right there is a preeminent school in the Southwest for hypnotherapy. Oh, cool. Thanks.
That is amazing.
It is. So it's been an interesting thing. I mean, I went to the Healing Arts School, Southwest Institute of Healing Arts in Tempe, Arizona. Really beautiful school. Learned hypnotherapy, learned life coaching, energy work. But I also learned when they started teaching me, I've been doing this my whole life already. So they would teach me something like, I already do this.
Wow.
Interesting. Okay, now I know how to refine it. I know how to harvest it better.
Yeah.
Then I studied with a Native American elder outside of Sedona. It's been an interesting journey. For the kid who was the first kid in his family to go to college and supposed to be, the corporate guy and do all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I did that for a little bit. I'm like, I don't want to do this.
That doesn't fit.
Doesn't fit. And even leaving the corporate world, I know I've told you this story before, but I had an office I was sharing, and I was seeing clients once a week, and it was just a fledgling business at that point, just seeing a few people. And one day, March 16th, I don't remember the year at this point, but it was a Sunday, I just looked up, whatever was bigger than me, and said, please, I can't do this anymore. Get me out of the corporate job. And I pleaded with such childlike innocence. Mm-hmm. And I went in the next day, and they laid off 25% of the company. I was the only person in Arizona to be let go. I was like, oh, okay, you got this.
Divine.
Yeah. So I trusted that. And then that led to sleeping on people's couches, that whole thing, because I kept thinking, like, I asked for something that is so true in my heart. I know I have some calling here. Mm-hmm. And I realized there's something that's just calling to me. I have to listen to this. So every time I was scared out of my mind, sleeping in the car or sleeping on someone's couch, I was like, no, there's something bigger guiding me. Just grab the next breadcrumb. Just keep moving forward, keep moving forward, keep moving forward.
You knew you were on your path.
I couldn't imagine going back to the corporate world. Because the second I'd sit my butt down, I'd be trying to figure out how to get out.
Yep.
I'm like, no, I have something here. But having said that, when I was in the corporate world, I was doing my work there. Mm-hmm. And then I graduated from there to doing it in this space now. So for the healers out there listening, do your work wherever you are. There will be a space if you're choosing to step into something more potent or more full-time or whatever word you may fill in there. But just trust you're doing the work wherever you need to be. And now I'm in North Carolina, and that all happened in 6 weeks.
Amazing. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you.
You're such a great part of this community, and love having you at Soul Wellness.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Soul Wellness was the only thing I knew.
I know, right?
Coming across the country, Soul Wellness was the only thing I knew. I'm like, oh my God, they do things in that town that I do? Like, oh my God, okay, cool.
That's crazy. I don't even know how you found us, but I remember the phone call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I was glad that you were coming here. What type of person would you say seeks your services?
So that's changing too. So a lot of times it's the healers, and sometimes it's the practitioners of healers. And I probably have worked with probably 80% women because I'm a safe guy. Yeah. So I show up in this space, but now men are starting to show up because the more I'm stepping into my divine masculine, it's creating a safe space to be the platform for someone to show a little bit of vulnerability so they can step into their divine masculine. Yeah. And for women, it's like, here's a safe man, and a lot of my trauma came from men.
Right.
So if I can hold that space for them, it's kind of shifting a little bit right now. Yeah. And it's turning into the description of being more shadow work type orientation, which is walking through the deepest, darkest places.
Yeah. You also do a tea talk here.
I do.
Once a month.
I do.
And tell me about that. First of all, you're a chef, and you make the most amazing drinks and tea concoctions I've ever tasted in my life. I wish that you would open your own bistro here. That would be a dream come true. But tell me what goes on in these tea talks, because I know that you've had some pretty profound experiences with that too.
Thank you. They're sweet. It's a really sweet night. It's on the outside, it looks like just a wisdom circle. Mm-hmm. I'll show up, and I try to hear it so long, so I try to cap it around 13, because when I've had it bigger than that, you play traffic cop too much. So my intention is to create a safe environment for people to share their wisdom, their triumphs and challenges. So someone will say, this is what I'm struggling with. And then someone will also say, hey, I went through that 5 years ago. This is what I found helped me. And now you have this communal sharing, and it creates a safe space. And in that space, I'll be doing my psychic healing work and just holding the space there. But the amount of times when there's 10 minutes left and someone has been a little quiet, a little mousy, just holding their cheese, a little, tucked in kind of thing, saying, can I say something? It's like, yeah, sure. And then they'll share something they've never shared before because they realized, oh, these people care. This is safe.
Yeah.
I can share this and not be judged. And they'll have the breakdown, the breakthrough. They'll have the moment, and you'll just see everyone lean in. They're not running away. They're leaning in. Mm-hmm. So it's so beautiful. You can call it just a tea talk. I say it's a tea talk because I make these non-caffeinated herbal concoctions, and So you have that. You have the wisdom circles. You're holding something to drink. You're having this conversation thing, but there's a bubble that's created, and everyone starts sharing, and they're talking about things they don't feel like they can talk to their friends or their family. And then to have the people just imagine if someone said, "Oh my God, I was raped. I never shared that before," and someone else is like, "Oh, my sister was raped. I know how hard that was for her." Mm-hmm. Now this person was maybe waiting their whole life to share this because they didn't have trusted people in their life. And now to have other people being like, "Oh my God, I didn't have that, but I had this horrific thing happen. I can only imagine how you feel. Here's a resource I used, or here's a modality that I used." Mm-hmm. And you see the person like, "I'm not alone."
Right.
Oh, and it's like, it looks like years of pain comes off and their body relaxes and their face relaxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even that drastic. It's funny when you say drastic, because the example I'd use, if you had a child, 2 children, one person had a gun pulled on them and one had a dog pop out. You'd say, "Oh, the dog is worse." I'm like, okay, maybe, but they had the same chemicals fire through.
Right.
They both thought their life was in danger.
Right.
So this thought of like, "Oh, it's not that bad." You don't know what happened in that person's inner world.
Right.
So it may not be something as traumatic as somebody sexually violating somebody, but it might be something else. And to still have people hold that space and say, "Hey, this other thing happened to me. Sounds like we had similar reactions. This is what I did." And then there's hugs, and it's a really beautiful space. And I'm smart ass, I like to make jokes. Like, I try to keep things fun and light too. So life can be heavy. It can also be fun. There's lightness everywhere too. So if you can share your heaviness, and let's honor that space, and then let's also bring some light into the darkness, you'd be surprised what happens.
I have always said, just as you being a friend of mine, since you landed in Mooresville, you are so good at having people change their perception or giving a different perception of a situation. And wow, what a difference that makes. I mean, seriously.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Perception's everything.
It is. And that's going back to the back thing. For years, the back was the worst thing for me. And suddenly realized, oh my God, it's been protecting me?
Right.
Okay, back, I'm sorry for all those things I said before. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But sometimes when you have someone 100% present with you, they'll hear things that other people weren't hearing.
Right.
Or that you're not even aware you're saying, or you're not even hearing. So it really comes down to presence.
Yeah.
I really feel like more than anything else, all the healing work it's all part of it. Mm-hmm. But if you have all that healing work and presence, you may not even actually access the healing work, but the healing work will infuse the presence. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important. So if you can have presence anywhere, show up with it.
Show up with
Especially with yourself.
Yeah.
See what happens.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that you want to share? Is there anything that we haven't covered?
I am doing this 10-week mentorship program. It's 10 sessions in 10 to 12 weeks. It is summer here. They're 45 minutes long. They're virtual. And I'll say this. Yeah, that's promotion, blah, blah, blah. But even if it's not me, find someone who's safe to show up. Especially if you're giving, you need to receive.
Yep.
You're going to crash. You're going to burn out. It's okay to give and receive and give. Mm-hmm. Just look at nature. It happens all the time in nature. The trees drop their leaves. They go down to the ground. They break down. They fertilize the soil. They give back to the tree.
Right.
So the tree is letting go what it no longer needs. And that very essence of that creates a cycle. Happens what we breathe in, we breathe out. We breathe to the plants breathe out to us. Everything's giving and receiving.
Yeah.
Why would we be separate from that? So sure, I'd love for you to reach out for the 10-week mentorship program, but if it's not me, find somebody that can just show up for you.
Yeah.
And even if you can't afford things, there are people who will work with you. Ask the question if they'll work with you. Don't just automatically assume they won't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Nothing I love more than when someone comes to me and like, "Oh, you're committed to doing the work?" Yeah, let's do it. Because a lot of people show up and they'll do what they need to do, but some people come in like, "What else do I need to do?" Mm-hmm. And like a good student, and you realize, "Oh, okay, let's do this."
Yeah.
It's really nice to have that full-on connection.
Yeah. This person's ready to change their life.
Completely. And that changes other people's lives by proxy.
It changes everybody around you. Every single one of your relationships and dynamics change when you change.
Yeah.
Yep. Tell everybody how to find you. What's the best way to find you?
You can find me on my website, thespiritualhealthcoach.com. You can send me an email at thespiritualhealthcoach@yahoo.com. You can call me at 908-418-7185. TikTok is Psychic Healer Michael, I think. Michael Anthony? That's what it is. Yeah, I don't know. I'm everywhere. Just reach out. Reach out to my website or just send me a message.
You're on our website as well, soulwellness.net. And I highly recommend you to anyone.
Yeah. Even if you see me, thank you. Even if you see me, just say hello. You'd be surprised just what happens in 10 seconds. Magic happens all the time.
It does.
It does.
That's the truth. Well, thank you so much for being with me and
great.
taking the time to talk to me today.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you very much. I appreciate this.
We'll do it again. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on another enriching episode of Soul Wellness with Kristen. We hope the insights shared today have resonated with you, inspiring a deeper connection to your own journey towards holistic well-being. If you enjoyed today's episode, we invite you to subscribe, share, and reach out. Your feedback fuels our mission to bring you meaningful content that educates, empowers, and uplifts. Remember, you are a vital part of this community, and together we're creating a ripple effect of positive change.